Welcome to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Hey, that's me. Hi, and welcome to Positive Talk. Our show features the best positive stories and people from around the globe as we endeavor to answer the universal question of why am I here and what is my purpose? Understanding that can change everything, and knowing your greatness is fundamental to living your best life. So join us right now as together we work to create the adventure of our lifetime. You know, we all have a different type of adventure we want to create in our lifetime. And some of us create interesting ones, and some of us don't. And some of us are following their passion, and they're doing it for, I don't know, years and years and years and years. And I got to tell you, our guest today, his name is Brent Olson, and he is a blogger of note. And he said something that made a whole lot of sense to me. I said, how long have you been doing this? And he said, 30 years. And I said, why do you keep doing it? He said, because I make money. It's like, oh, now there's an interesting concept. Brent, welcome to the show. How are you?
Well, thanks a lot for having me. It's a great day to be alive.
But when you get to be, you know, it's funny because I'm now to a point where I can call almost everybody youngster and really mean it.
Yeah, well, you know, I had a friend who was a bomber pilot in the South Pacific during World War II. And his whole life, if you asked him how he was, he'd say, every day above dirt's a good one. Exactly. And I think he decided that in 1945 and never wavered from that the rest of his life. So I'm trying to use that as an example.
Yeah, you know, and it's interesting about that, Brent, when you get to be a little longer in the tooth, and you see other folks that are even longer. I'm one of my mother, but before my mother passed away, her boyfriend, and she was 90, he was 98. He was a fighter pilot in World War II, and so he got a chance to go over to Normandy and stuff, and it is so sad that the end of an era is the guys that were in World War II and the greatest generation are now they're all dying because they're in their 90s, late 90s or early hundreds, and it's sad when a piece of history like that fades away and there's nobody left to talk to about what actually happened there. You know what I mean?
And part of the problem is it was hard getting them to talk about it.
Yeah.
My father died 6 months ago in 97, and he joined the Army when he was 17 years old in 1944. So there can't, you know, I think we're down to less than 100,000 World War II vets out of what, 11, 12 million originally.
Yeah.
So you're right. It's you want to hope you get all this stuff written down because it's going to go away.
Yeah. A while ago, I had a business that I was doing what I called family legacies, and I interviewed a gentleman that he said he didn't have much of a life, and it was pretty normal and stuff. And so we got to talking with him, and he said, yeah, General Patton and I said, I'm sorry, excuse me. He said, well, I was chief of staff for General Patton as he was going across Europe to save us from Hitler. And I said, you haven't had much of a life? And he said, oh, no. And then I went to Hollywood and I met Bob Hope and Bing Crosby and worked with them. And it was like, no wonder your son wanted this on tape because your life was extraordinary.
It's funny. I had sort of a similar experience many years ago. I went to a high school graduation party of a former pastor of ours, and I was sitting next to an elderly woman eating lunch, and I complimented her on the brooch she was wearing. I said, "Oh, it's a lovely brooch," and it wasn't that lovely. It's just that I was struggling to make conversation, and she says, "Oh yeah, that's a miniature of my Distinguished Service Cross." And I was like, what? She's like, yeah, I was in the first unit of waves inducted into the Navy in World War II, and I was on MacArthur's personal staff, and I got a Purple Heart for a snake attack on New Guinea. And so I just sat entranced the rest of the afternoon listening to her tell stories. And, and that if that isn't a lesson, I don't know what is. I am convinced everyone has at least one fantastic story in them. And it just sometimes it takes a little while to unearth it, but it's there.
Can I tell you one more from those days when I was doing that? That it was a little older lady, and her husband had passed away, and one of her kids wanted her story. And so I said, well, so tell me a little bit about yourself. And she said, well, in 1941, I was a soda jerk. Now, for those of you who are under like 60, you have no idea what a soda jerk is. There used to be a place where you could get Coca-Cola and things, and they would mix it, and it was like a bar where you would go and you would mix your soda pop and your ice creams and stuff like that, and they called them a soda jerk, and because they would jerk the handle of the soda. And so she was there, and in walks a young man in a uniform, and he looks all spiffy, and he's a good-looking guy, and he says, give me something," and he ordered something, and he said, "I'm leaving to go be deployed or to go overseas day after tomorrow." And they get to talking and stuff, and they have a nice conversation, and he comes back the next day, and he proposes marriage.
Oh, wow. Okay.
She accepts his proposal, and he goes off to war. And fortunately for him, he came back. They had 5 kids and were married for 60 years. And she, of course, my story is not very special and stuff. So, if my advice to somebody, and I'll tell this to everybody, is before somebody passes away, get their story down on tape or a digital thing and just talk to them so that their grandchildren, their great grandchildren will have their voice. When my dad passed away, at his memorial service, because that's what I did and I edited it, he was there and he talked at his memorial service, and there wasn't a dry eye in the house because he talked about how he and my mom met and what his life meant to him and stuff. And so do that for people. Anyway, I'll get off my soapbox now. We are talking with Brent and Brent Olson. He is a blogger of note. And do you do a podcast, or have you written books or any of that stuff that I know of?
Oh, well, let's see, I've had a weekly column without fail since 1995.
That's 30 years.
Yeah, yeah. That's and actually in that time, I've never missed the column has come out every week. Once I was actually in the hospital and my wife wrote the column. And once my son was home on leave from the Marine Corps and told me this terrific story, and I said, why don't you write my column this week? But otherwise, it's been me for 30 years.
And where can they find your column?
Well, you would have to pay a lot of money and subscribe to it, but I hang on to the copyright. You see, I've had enough magazines go bankrupt over the years that
you've survived the magazines,
that there's people who've been reading me for years who've lost sort of the avenue to find me. So what I do is I hang on to my the copyright for my column, and then a few days after the people who pay for it get it, I put it up on Substack for free and on my Independently Speaking Facebook page. So they can track me down if they still want to.
Independently Speaking, you can go to brentolson.substack.com, and I'm looking at one that you just posted of July 19th, and you were chatting with a young woman, and I'll leave it there because it was really a fun column, and
Okay.
you're a very gifted writer. Did you come by this by trade, by accident? How did you get to start doing the column?
Uh, this is always the embarrassing part of the story. Is that when I was about 40, you see, I live in the house my great grandparents built,
Isn't that cool?
and I started farming in 1976, which in Minnesota was the worst drought in 100 years. So my wife and I started the year with nothing and ended with less than that. And you maybe know that feeling.
I
And
have been there.
yeah, anyway, I farmed for 30 years. And in the midst of it, when I was about 40, 41, my wife and I had been the youth leaders in our church. And when a kid went off to college or something, I'd write them a little letter. And some of them would write back. And if they wrote back, I'd write back to them. And that's how my column actually started. It just was basically letters to friends, except now there's about 1 million of them, most of whom I don't know, and uh, and that's
Is
it. And I blackmailed our local newspaper into paying me for a column, and then I contacted Agricultural Magazine and said I'm a newspaper columnist. I didn't say it was in a town of 500 people, and uh, and then it all kind of came from there. But basically, I woke up about the time I was 40 and said, "What the hell? Let's try this." And it really is not more complicated than that.
Well, can I tell you something? That is the exact story that I like to tell people, because there was a moment in your life, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like it's true. There was a moment in your life when you were like, okay, so why am I really here? What is my purpose? What am I here to do? How can I really positively impact the world and to do something that I love to do? And it sounds like that's how you came to this. Am I right?
You're exactly right. You're exactly right. You see, I mean, I was born and raised a Methodist, and John Wesley has a famous quote about do all the good you can in all the ways you can in all the places you can to all the people you can as long as ever you can. And I internalize that, and I really kind of give that my best shot. And that's where what I'm pushing now is a book I wrote called Between the Helpless and the Darkness, which is an alternative history of I try to make this world a better place, and I just had to start 1,000 years ago in order to make things come out the way I wanted to.
It's pretty amazing, isn't it? And 1,000 years in order to make all the things work in order for everybody to come together. And that's, I hope it doesn't take 1,000 years. I'm not going to be here anymore and stuff. You might be, but I won't be here. But I would really like to see, if I had my druthers. Well, I would really like to see us all get along and understand that while we may have different ideas and different likes, some may like Taylor Swift and some may not. Some may like, Alfred Hitchcock and some may not. But can't we get along and appreciate each other for who we are?
It's I don't know. I am kind of a bleeding heart liberal, and I am living in a pretty red rural area in western Minnesota. But in my complicated life, I won 6 elections for county commissioner. Now, for those of you who are unfamiliar, county commissioner is perhaps the least important elected office in the United States, but being exactly who I am, surrounded by neighbors who disagree with a lot of what I believe, I was able to win 6 elections over 20 years. So I think,
Congratulations.
I think there's hope. I think there's hope for us maybe getting along.
I I hope you're right. That's all I can say is I really hope you're right because there's a lot of hate, division, and fear. But you see, the problem or the thing is, this cool thing about it is you are a, a pillar of your community and you're right there. And when people get to know each other, a lot of the division and the hate and the fear of the other goes away because they know you. It's like, oh, that's just him. That's just Brent. Don't you know? And he's got his attitudes, and we got ours. But he's a good guy. He lives in his great grandfather's house, and he does the column, and he does a good job for us. So the key is getting to know each other.
Well, are you familiar with and trust me, this is germane. Are you familiar with a food item called lutefisk?
Yes, I am. As a matter of fact, my mother's boyfriend used to do lutefisk.
Okay, then you'll understand this story. The first European settlers in Big Stone County were New England Yankees, and they were followed about 10 years later by a swarm of Norwegians and Swedes. And I always wonder what they thought the first time they walked into a restaurant and saw lutefisk on the menu. It must have felt like the world was coming to an end.
Exactly.
But we came out the other side of that.
Well, and from what I've never eaten it myself, but I'm understanding it's an acquired taste.
Well, it's the sort of food that's eaten by people to help keep them from starving to death.
Yeah,
that's its biggest virtue.
Exactly, but so and you're living proof that it doesn't matter where you live, that you can get along with, and you got elected, and so congratulations.
Yeah, and it's and that's the other thing. We do not live in a perfect world, but this world we live in, I couldn't have had the career I had without the wonders of the internet. And I have friends who I've never met all over the world who send me comments on my column and things like that. And if this were 100 years ago, I would have had to move to New York or someplace like that to have some sort of similar career arc. And now I live in a place I love, doing what I love to do. And that's not bad.
No, it's actually, not only is it not bad, it's extremely good, and a lot of people would are would love to be in your position, which from my position they can be, because I'm kind of the same. I live in my little home in Seattle, Washington, and yet my podcast is heard all around the world.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? Yeah,
it really is. I have 1 million listeners a month, and I get letters from. I had a family from Asia send me a picture of themselves, a beautiful teenage girl, and then a young 20-something, and then mom, and they took the time to take a picture of themselves, send it to me, and said, "Thank you. In our country, we need to laugh, and you help us laugh." And
that's great. That's a great story.
And when we can affect. We see, you and I don't tell anybody because everybody will want to do this, but you and I have the ability to positively impact a lot of people, and most of them will never meet, and it doesn't matter.
I think about that a lot. I think about that a lot. In fact, whenever I get too spooled up by politics, and you just your fingers are kind of on fire as they're racing across the keyboard as you're writing this 600 word that's going to ultimately just straighten people out. And then every now and sometimes I do that, but not very often. Because I think more often than not, people need to hear something that makes them laugh, or something that makes them think, or something that makes them feel just a tiny bit better about the world. And I think that's important too.
Oh, it's vital, because everybody wants to feel that. Everybody wants to be part of something bigger than themselves. And if we can all generate the same good feeling about being a human, being alive, taking care of each other, that is, saying hello to the person at the grocery store, saying hello to the bus driver. I was one of those for 12 years and nobody's ever said hello to me.
Something that I would guess probably drives my family insane, but they don't try and stop me from doing it, is I have this compulsion, particularly in gas stations with teenage clerks who say, "Have a great day," but without making eye contact. I have this compulsion to make a fleeting human moment of contact, just so that we have this tiny little frame where we both acknowledge that we're human beings, and it's a thing to me. It's I'll keep working until I get
so what
some
do you do?
acknowledgement.
So what do you do to get that acknowledgement?
Well, there's some things I like. Okay, I'll tell you an example. I was at a Home Depot, and in our part of the world, we're starting to get a significant Muslim community, immigrants. A lot of them from Somalia.
Mm-hmm.
And I was at a Home Depot, and there was this young woman, a teenager, beautiful, very, very dark skinned, and she was wearing this kind of rose hijab that just went perfectly with her complexion. And she said, "How are you?" And I said, "I'm bald and old." and and she laughed, and she was wearing rubber bands on her braces that matched her hijab. And I was just I was just smitten. I wanted to adopt her. I wanted. Can I send you to college? It was just this warm sort of moment that made me feel better the whole rest of the day. And I don't think it ruined her day either.
No, that's a great story because that is a story that she will share with other people.
Yeah.
By the way, we're talking with Brent C. Olson. He's he's really is a lot of fun to talk to, and his blog is Independently Speaking, and we'll tell you how to do that when we come back, because we got a real quick message we got to do, and then we will be right back with more. Please stay with us.
They have your eyes. They have your ears. They have your smile. Now all they need is a little more of your time. Make a difference in your child's life, because anyone can be a father. It takes time to be a dad.
All right, I thought I'd bring something back from the 70s. And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald, and Brent C. Olson is our guest. I got to tell you, how'd you find me? You are delightful, young man.
Well, there's a publicist I work with who keeps lining things up for me, and he's the one who found you. I just really kind of follow his recommendations.
Oh, very nice, very nice.
But I'm going to be watching you from here on out, because this is interesting. I like your take on the world. I think sometimes you might feel like you're emptying a canoe with a teaspoon, but you you got to keep shoveling.
Yeah, I tell you, I worked before I was a bus driver. I was a chicken salesman, probably the only chicken salesman you've ever met.
Okay.
For a company out of Arkansas. And of course, the boys in Arkansas are Southern Baptist, and they're very excited about that and about who they are. And so I when I said I'm from Seattle, they said, "Oh, you're from the left coast." And so, I'm kind of used to differences in that way, but this is a positive, a progressive show that we believe that we should all get along. And I love talking to people who are doing that. And you're touching, you have 1 million listeners. You're touching, or readers. You're touching 1 million people.
Yeah, I think so. By and large, that's what the people who pay me tell me. I
There-
don't know, I don't know how many of them actually read what I write, but it's there in front of them.
no, they wouldn't just stare at it. They're because you're impacting them in a real positive way, and that is so important. And the beautiful thing about what you're doing is because you are have experienced a little bit more life than most. You've got a unique perspective on a lot of things that you've experienced before that a lot of people may not be experiencing until now. I was talking to somebody earlier who was born in 1999. How could they know anything if they're born they're only 25?
That's something I noticed. My parents both lived into their 90s, and that's something. And they lived just a couple miles from us in a house they built, and that was something I noticed over the years. As they got older, they became considerably more generous with people, more accepting and of various people's foibles. They had just seen enough that they were able to sort out what mattered from what really didn't matter. And honestly, a lot of stuff doesn't matter as much as we think it does.
Ain't that the truth? Ain't that the truth? Because at the end of the day, we're all going to figure it out anyway. But it would be nice if we could all get along and treat each other with the respect that each of us is due.
Yeah, yeah, it sure would. It sure would. And that's you know, I've written 8 books so far, 4 collections of essays, kind of a memoir, and then 3 novels. One of which is this alternative history, and the other one is kind of a post-apocalyptic primer about how we could start making a better world from the world we're in as we speak. And that's I just I it, it just kind of dawned on me not too long ago that I've been sort of wrestling with that my whole life, is trying to make things a little better in my real world and in my fictional world as well.
I couldn't agree more. And by the way, I'm looking here and I don't see. We need to build you a website, young man. Then to put all your books on there and all your writings and stuff, because you are creating a huge legacy of, and not only as of, I think of like Mark Twain or other people of their who lived in their time, but they created a legacy around that time, and future and past, and different ways of thinking about how things could be and how things could be better. We need. I need to talk to your publicist. We need to get a really cool website for you.
Okay, it's there was a point in my life where I put really a tremendous amount of work into a website and doing all of this other stuff. And I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying you're wrong. I mean, you're right. But
But it's what you've had. You need to feel comfortable with it too.
yeah, it's not. I like doing this. I like doing the work. I don't like doing all the other stuff. You might be shocked to hear this, but I am not a Kardashian.
Well, I'm the exact same way.
Yeah.
I love this is my third podcast in a row. I've been doing this since from like noon
Oh
um
wow.
until now, and I just love it. I love every moment of it. But if you want me to build a website, I can't. If you want me to go on what is it, Chimp Monkey or whatever, and send out emails and do all this and market and stuff, it's like screw that. I don't want to do that. So Unfortunately, my parents left me a little bit so that I can hire somebody to do that for me because I'm not going to do it myself.
There
But
is a chance it's not called Chipmunky.
it's what is it? Oh, MailChimp. That's what it is. Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah. See, and and they'll talk. I've got a couple of people. They're quite a bit younger than me, and so they're very tech savvy. And they'll be going back and forth text. Share my screen. Do this. And I'm sitting there going, okay, let's see. Where is the letter S? Okay, there it is. I got it. Okay, now what? And stuff. And so I end up just sitting here.
I've got a 16-year-old granddaughter who
then
says,
you know exactly.
Papa, you need to be on Instagram. And I'm like, well, okay, if you do it, baby, I'll go along. But
and she said, "Well, gee, thanks, Grandpa. Gotta go.
Yeah,
I've got to go in my car and do all the stuff." By the way, we're talking with Brent C. Olson. I got to ask you, you've written 6 books, and see what else is there in your life that you haven't told me, young man? You've been an elected representative. You've got a blog. You've got an author. You're probably a podcaster underneath there someplace, and an actor and doing all sorts of stuff. But
let's see. I'm not an actor. I've
well,
I've filed stories from 20 countries on 6 continents.
Oh, that's a big deal. That's a big deal.
I haven't found anyone willing to pay me to go Antarctica yet, but
there ain't nobody there except the Russians. But that's a story for another time.
Yeah.
Brent, I need to take a station break, but we're going to come right back with more. You are delightful to talk to, and we're kind of the same age, so that we can talk about things that you and I all understand, and nobody else will be even around to have gotten it. It's like LBJ when he decided not to rerun for office and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, so we'll be right back. Stay right where you are, everybody.
Okay. You're listening to Brushwood Media Network, the best in syndicated talk, news, and entertainment shows.
As you go about your daily life, look closer. As you gather with family and friends who love and support you, look closer. There are youth right in your community who don't have the home, warmth, and healing you have. So look closer. Every year across America, a staggering 4.2 million youth are homeless or trafficked. And for 50 years, Covenant House has worked relentlessly to keep them safe and protected. Tonight, 2,000 young people will sleep safely in a Covenant House bed. And tomorrow, they will wake up surrounded by love. They get clean clothes, hot meals, medical care, and a safe place to sleep. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. In sites across America to help them fulfill the great promise of their lives. So look closer at Covenant House. To help or get help, go to covenanthouse.org.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. And we got a great guest for you today. And his name is Brent C. Olson. He is he's a blogger. He is a elected official in a red state, and he's a left of center, we'll say. He also has written a bunch of books and stuff. So go to his blog site, which is brentolson.substack.com, and you can find him. Independently Speaking is the name of his podcast. Speaking of which, how'd you come up with the name?
I've always I have a trouble with being told what to say. and actually my family, well, I call it the $10,000 email because I used to write for a few magazines for Meredith Publications, and once an editor wrote me and said, "Yeah, you can't say that." And I was like, "No, I'm pretty sure I can. Maybe not just for you." Uh, so, and that cost me some money, but I cleared it with my wife first, and I've never regretted it. And I don't necessarily fall into easy niches, so I decided to just go with that.
I'll bet you're one of those guys. It happened to me. I'll bet you it's happened to you, where an employer like person says to you, Brent, you're not a very good employee because you don't like to do what you're told.
I've, I the last time I actually worked for someone was in 1975.
I graduated from high school that year.
Yeah. Well, that was the end of my career really as an employee. I've had I've had numerous editors over the years, but otherwise I've been I've been a farmer, and I've been a writer, and I've been a county commissioner, so that made me a boss, and that's I'm not, and I think that was probably a wise career choice, because I think you are correct. I would not be the employee of choice for many, many people.
I got to ask you, because we're contemporaries, when I'm a couple of years behind you, but I'm curious to know, when you reflect, sitting in your easy chair, sitting out front in your porch, watching the world go around, and you reflect about your time here on earth, I'm pretty sure you're pleased with your contribution and what you've done, but how would you describe your feelings about where you are today, and the accumulation of all the things in your life?
Well, I've been married nearly 50 years.
Good for you. Congratulations.
It'll be, well, it's not a done deal yet. Our 50th wedding anniversary will be March 30th. So I'm on, I'm a little concerned until we cross that milestone.
Now you'll get there.
But we have 3 children who are good human beings and who are doing work that matters in the world. I'm not, getting back to the Methodist thing, John Wesley had a quote, a prayer where he said, "Please God, don't let me live long enough to become useless." So I'm 70. My parents both had all their marbles well into their 90s. I had a grandmother who lived to be 100. So I think I've got almost 20 years of productivity ahead of me. My mom would go in and read. She was a teacher for many years, but towards the end of her life, she would go in and read to people in the nursing home, some of whom had been her students when they were in school.
Oh, the irony of it all.
So I'm not, I will never be content with what I've done. I take a certain amount of pride in what I've done, but I feel a need to keep my oar in the water, and paddle a little slower, but keep paddling as long as I can.
That is, by the way, and I'm sure you know this, but for those in our audience who may not have heard this before, when you talk to hospice workers and people that are at the end of their life, their biggest regret is that they stopped and they didn't continue doing what it was that made them happy in life until the very last day, so that you could leave this planet and say, I had no regrets. I left it all on the table.
Yep. I think that's really important. I think that's tremendously important to just keep giving it your best shot every day of your life. And older people are I think it's a vast disservice to turn to people and go, okay, you're 67, find a condo someplace warm and play golf, and we're done with you. I think that's a huge mistake on all concerned. I think it's a world where there's a lot to do, a lot left to do, and I do it a lot slower, and and my wife and I goof off considerably more than we used to, but you know, I'm still kind of in there pitching, and I think that matters. I've got 4 more books I need to write before I die, so so that's one of my goals.
Well, you've got 30 years.
Yeah.
So one a decade and you're good.
Yep, that's right.
You know, because I agree with you, because I watched my dad. He was an executive with Nordstrom. And I've told this story before, but it bears repeating. He was an executive with Nordstrom, and at 58 years old, he made the mistake of saying, you know, I may want to slow down or retire one of these days. And Mr. Nordstrom, one of the head guys, called him into his office the next day and gave him his severance agreement.
Oh, wow.
And they said, gee, Jack, it's been great having you here. Here's your severance agreement, and thank you. Have a great retirement. And but he'd been Mr. McDonald for 30 some years, and now suddenly he was just Jack. All of his friends were still working. He didn't have much to do. He played golf and stuff, but it wasn't something that he was passionate. He was passionate about golf, but then as he got a little older and couldn't hit the ball as far, that's one of those games of diminishing rewards where you can't hit it as far, so it's no fun anymore. And so, you know, it became a negative life for him, and I will not allow that to happen to me. And I'm glad you're not allowing that to happen to you or your wife or anybody you know, because I'm sure that you're helping them understand that be passionate about what you're doing. You can do it, and keep going. Just keep going.
Yep. I believe that. You know, the thing here, I can share this secret with you about golf. The key to golf is only playing it 3 times a year. Because
You're right.
If you play golf 3 times a year, if you hit a bad shot, you go, well, what the hell? I only play golf 3 times a year. How good can I be? But the 4th time you play, you'll make a good shot, and you'll say to yourself, you know, if I practiced, I could get pretty good at this. And at that point, your life is ruined from there on out.
That's right. That's right. In your blog, I sense that you have a really great sense of humor with it. Would I be true in that?
I like to think I do. I really, one of the great pleasures in my life is making people laugh, leaving a room and knowing people have smiles on their faces. It's a big deal to me. I enjoy that a lot. And I enjoyed it as a county commissioner too. I mean, I enjoyed adding a little levity to what are, you know, usually pretty serious situations. But you know, you can sit and put a glum look on your face and snap at your help and your colleagues, and you don't actually get anything more accomplished. It's like you mentioned Mark Twain. You know, they always talk about Mark Twain, the humorist. You know, Mark Twain could make you laugh, but I would contend he was maybe the most serious writer we've ever had in the United States.
Yeah, I agree.
And then that's the sort of thing I think about all the time.
Well, there's a reason why, of all the authors that are out there, over time, Mark Twain is still highly regarded, still well read. I wish that some of his books weren't being taken out of the schools, because I think that's something that isn't right. But other than that, I mean, he was a great writer, and he was a great humanist.
Yeah. Yep. He was. And the book thing, we've just gone badly astray there. I remember my mom went back to college. She was a country school teacher. And then she went back to college when I started school and to get her final degree. And she had her whole rack of books were in the bookshelves in my room because I had the only bookshelves in the house. And so I would read when I was, 11, 12, 13, 14 years old, I would read her literature textbooks, and one of them was Lord of the Flies. And I read it, and my mom said I finished it, and she let me do it. She let me read anything I wanted. But when I finished it, I went down to her and I said, Mom, I don't think that's a book for a 12-year-old. But I don't think kids are ruined by reading books. There's things that ruin a kid, but I don't think reading whatever they want is one of the things.
Well, I can tell you, I agree with you 100%. It's that computer that they carry around with them that has access to anything on the web, any image, any thought, anything can be more damaging, and also social media because of the bullying and all the stuff that goes on there. By the way, again, we're talking with Brent C. Olson. He's a blogger, 30 years, and he's kind of godlike for me because he actually gets paid for his work. Isn't that cool? So we need to take our last break, and when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about, I don't know. I'll let him lead the discussion. We'll figure it out when we come back. So stay right with us. This is Holly, my beautiful assistant, who's voicing this commercial.
You're listening to Positive Talk Radio. We're going to take a short break to tell you audio and music creators about our commercial affiliate, Lyric Vids, specializing in creating amazing and engaging lyric videos. Are you looking to promote your videos in the most engaging way, but you don't have an animator and an editor? Whether you're an artist, musician, or business with a message to share, our lyric videos are designed to hook viewers and amplify your reach. Go to positivetalkradio.net/lyric vids. That's positivetalkradio.net/LYRICVIDS now to get started. Welcome back to Positive Talk Radio. We hope you enjoyed learning about our affiliate Lyric Vids, who specialize in creating captivating animated lyric videos. Now let's get back to the show.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald, right here on the Brushwood Media Network and elsewhere. The Brushwood Media Network has been very kind to us, and we're on twice a day at 5 p.m. Eastern and midnight Eastern, so that we're on drive time in the morning in Europe and stuff. So we have 1 million listeners or more on a monthly basis, and with all the places that Positive Talk is these days, I really appreciate someone like you coming on and talking about all of the work that you do and the number of listeners that you have and how you've cultivated that over 30 years. If you're a young writer or a blogger or an editorialist, give us some advice on how to be successful over a period of time.
Well, when I teach writing classes, one of the first things I say is you can lie to your audience as much as you want, but if you lie to yourself, you're a bad writer.
Oh.
Yeah, you always have to strive as hard as you can to tell the truth to yourself, because I think integrity and honesty and saying what you mean bleeds through. I mean, I live in this world. I know that we have a tremendous market for insincerity and lying and outright duplicity, but I try and take the long view and think that if you're saying something you believe and you're saying something that matters, and if you work enough to get good at it, you're going to end up with some success. Really, as a writer, you need to have something to say, and you need to be able to say it clearly, and go from there.
And there's something that is new in the last 8 to 10 years, and I want to get your take on it. Because there's something now called, pay per click or getting clicks. And what getting clicks are, for those who don't know what that means, is that the number of people that will click on your article or your story or whatever you're doing. So you tend to make it as sensational as you can to try and get as many clicks as you can, because that's ultimately how you get paid. I think it pollutes the industry. What do you think?
Oh, it absolutely does. It does, and it's sad, and it's not a completely new thing in the world. There's always been. There's a guy named George Sanders who wrote an essay called "The Brain Dead Megaphone," where if you haven't read it, you should. It's as good a distillation of what's going on in the world as possible. He says, picture yourself at a party, and a guy comes in with a megaphone and starts shouting into it. And he's going, "The cheese puffs are wonderful." Or he says, "Look at the shoes that woman's wearing. They're hideous." And just by the fact that he's louder than everyone else, he completely changes the tenor of the party. Some people will gravitate to him because they think if he's that loud, he must know what he's saying. Some people will leave the party completely. But yeah, and we give way too much credence to the people with the biggest megaphones and the people who are willing to say the things that shock us the most. So yeah, it's a problem. You're absolutely right.
The interesting thing is I've interviewed a lot of people, and I really am not interested in interviewing hoity-toity celebrities and big time folks and things who think that they're big time folks and things, because they're just people, and they just have their own attitudes and their own um ideas, and some of them don't really say what they mean or mean what they say because of their they want to keep a certain profile or certain reputation or whatever it is. I like interviewing people like you, that you're famous in your own right. And by the way, this is Brent Olson, and you've got a million people, and you're a writer, and you do all of these things, but you're not pretentious. You're sitting in your grandfather's or great grandfather's house.
My great grandfather's house.
Holy mackerel! When was that built?
They moved here, they homesteaded in 1880. The new part of the house was built in 1916.
Can you imagine that, being in that place for that amount of time, in that house? That house has got some real big history to it.
We were just talking about that with our grandchildren. The first summer we lived here, we heard we were sitting in the living room and we heard footsteps upstairs, like a man wearing heavy work boots. And we decided it was my great uncle Carl checking in on us. But it's a house full of ghosts, but they're all ghosts I know, so they don't hold much fear to me.
No, and eventually they're going to find their way into the light and stuff. But it's a house with character, like what you have. I was interviewing a gentleman whose house is 450 years old in Scotland.
Oh wow.
And
Wow.
he said, I said, "Well, good Lord, how thick are the walls?" And he said, 4 feet. Said, "You've got 4 feet walls around your house?" He said, "It doesn't get cold here much."
Yeah.
So it's like, but a house like that is Americana, because those people came and were immigrants. And I wish that we looked at immigrants the same way, but that's a personal thing. But they were immigrants, and they came here, and they ended up where you are, and it's really cool. It's really cool.
It is. And we are. God, geez, we're a nation of immigrants. I mean, the people who get off the boat now, we say, yeah, get in there, learn English right away. Well, my great-grandparents helped build a church here, and they held services in Norwegian for 47 years. So,
And cooked lutefisk.
and cooked lutefisk, yeah. And they did okay in the end. So I've got, I have nothing against immigrants. I think that's what makes America America.
I will tell you, just a real quick story before we go. I was a general manager of a Mexican restaurant. Don't ask me how. But I was in.
It does sound like a longer story.
There it is, a much longer story. But one of the things that we did is we had a couple of Mexican guys that were Mexican nationals that were working in the dish pit. They were, and I don't know if you've ever watched dishes in a Mexican restaurant, but it is gross.
Yeah,
it's horrible. It's awful. And so I would pair these two up with a high school kid, and inevitably, by the time the shift was half over, the high school kid had left. His apron was on the dumpster, and these two would finish up the shift. And eventually they came to me and said, don't hire these white guys to come in here and do this. Pay us a couple of bucks more an hour, and he and I will do it. And then they took their money and they sent half of it home to take care of their family. I could not fault somebody like that. And they were immigrants, and they did a great job. So what do you do?
Yep. And that's what I mean. The first year, my Laura Ingalls Wilder books, The Long Winter, where they were snowed in all winter.
Oh yeah.
Well, that winter was the year my great-grandparents came to America, and his first job was shoveling snow off railroad tracks. So,
jeez.
So you got to grab the bottom rung on the ladder when you're the last one off the boat, and it's a long climb to the top. But that bottom rung, that's who gets it. That's the way it's always been.
That's it. But I gotta laugh. People that say, these immigrants and stuff, and I said, okay, do you want to go pick fruit?
Yeah.
Are you really excited about picking cotton? It's like, no, I'm not going to do that. It's like, okay, then, well, maybe we should have some of them, or you're not going to have any clothes. We've been talking with Brent C. Olson. Mr. Olson, I've got to go, but I've got a minute. And I want to have you tell our audience anything that you would like them to know.
Well, look me up. Look at my Facebook page, independently.speaking. Look for my books on Amazon or my publisher, Kirkhouse. I get more royalties if you buy a book from Kirkhouse. And or if you want to send me a note, we can chat. It's life is good. So Any day above dirt's a good one.
Every day you wake up is a fine day in my book.
Yep.
Independently.speaking on Facebook, and you can buy his books and do everything that way. And I would advocate that you do that, because he deserves to get paid for his work, as do all of us. Wait a minute, he is getting paid for his work. He deserves to get paid more for his work.
There we go.
Brent, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Well, thanks to you. It was big fun. It really was.
I'm glad, and you're welcome back anytime you want to.
Okay. You take care.
I will, and you as well. Take care. Thanks for listening to this episode of Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Our purpose is to provide everyone with a positive, entertaining, and educational experience. I would love your feedback and comments about the show, including possible topics and great guest suggestions. Please email me at kevin@kmmedia.pro. And remember, be kind to one another, because each other's all we've got.